Okay.
Hi, everybody, and welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so excited to have Nancy Hendrickson with me today. Thank you, Nancy, for
Oh,
being here.
thank you so much for the invite. I can't tell you how much I've been looking forward to doing this.
Oh, I read much later that you also do uh, what is it? You have a page, I guess, on one of the metaphysical books. I'm not books, magazines,
Oh,
or e-zines. Yeah,
the Cartomancer. I
the
write,
Cartomancer. Yeah,
and I think this is my third year of writing columns for them.
that's
And
wonderful.
I don't want to get off track immediately because I
Sure.
do have a tendency to go there, but
That's
it
okay.
it is very interesting because you can get back issues. And
Sure.
before in backstage, we were talking about old tarot decks. And the
Uh-huh.
very first year, I wrote about some of my very favorite old tarot decks. And,
Uh-huh.
for people who are new to tarot, it's old to me, but it's new to them. And
Sure.
that's
Yeah.
just a lot of fun.
Sure it is. Yeah. Well, obviously you have a great love for research because
Oh,
you're also a genealogist.
I do. I do.
And I admire that. I teach research writing and I know how I like the research. It's the writing that's a little harder to get to, but yeah.
I think that's a plague for authors
Uh-huh.
who love to research. It's hard to make the switch over to writing.
Sure. I
But yeah,
understand.
I
Yeah.
kind of kid that I should have been a researcher because I can spend forever in a library.
Yeah. Wow. That's great. I know I feel the same way between a library and a bookstore. That's my
I
heaven,
know.
so I understand.
Me
I
too.
Yeah, I just wanna say hi to those of you who are already here. Thank you for coming, and thank you for welcoming Nancy as well. And, we're gonna take questions later on. We're gonna sort of talk about her book and other projects she's working on. But I have to tell you all, I just told Nancy that when I got the book, I was so excited. And you know what I really love about it is that you can get a book, and this is the book, Ancestral Tarot, Uncover Your Past and Chart Your Future by Nancy Hendrickson. You can get the book on your website too, right? Your website has it.
It just links to Amazon.
It
So
just,
Amazon is the easiest point.
Amazon
Yeah.
has it. That's where I got it. Yeah.
Mhm.
And So I got it and it's like gold. I don't know. I just had so much fun with it because I'm hearing a lot in the community about ancestral trauma and people trying to work through that. And of course, we all love the tarot. We love all kinds of different spiritual tools that we have. And so I broke it open and I started reading it and I thought to myself, I know that I will do all of these things in here. I don't always feel that way. I feel like, well, I could skip this one or move.
Well,
No, I feel
thank
like
you.
this really, yeah,
Thank
this is
you.
really well written. And I think a lot of that too comes, well, you're past with the tarot and you're past with
With
genealogy.
genealogy, it
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
And my roots are very deep in genealogy and
Uh-huh.
almost as deep in tarot. And
Okay.
the thing too is it was my opportunity to mesh the two. And I actually told my editor, this is the book I was always meant to write. And I think I've lost track. I think I've written 20 some books.
Uh-huh.
And um, this is the one that was hardest for me
Sure.
because by nature, I'm pretty private, and this book forced me to be super vulnerable, which is
Sure.
kind of scary place for me. But
Uh-huh.
anyway, thank you for your very kind words. I appreciate it.
Well, I find more and more that I have colleagues, I call them colleagues here on YouTube, let's say, that have channels, and you would not believe the amount of them. I would say that probably 90% are introverts, and they did not want to do channels. They did not want to
Mhm.
be open, and I think the universe and the way the ascension is working and everything, that we are called here to bring the tools for others, and that people are stepping over that uncomfortable spot and sort of moving into where they can help other people. So, yeah.
Isn't that interesting? And I want to just circle back to what you
Sure.
said about ancestral healing,
Uh-huh.
because that takes so many forms. I mean, it could take, I'm just going to use my mother as an example, growing up
Mhm.
in an incredibly abusive and cruel environment.
Oh,
So there's that kind of ancestral healing that we know in our own lifetimes. But as you start to work through the book and draw cards back 3, 4, 5 generations, patterns start to emerge. And
yeah.
what's fascinating is you can exactly see which generation something flipped.
Really?
When you do the exercises, you
Okay.
will see this. But you'll go along and it's very just it's there's just a similar pattern, goes, and
Yep.
then all of a sudden there's a flip over, and you know that's when that very unhealthy pattern started.
Okay.
So it's
Okay.
it's it's great if you do the exercises, you'll find it.
Yeah. Wow. Having parents who were born in the early part of the 20th century. I have a father who was born in 1917, my mother 1920, and I explained to Nancy that both of my set of grandparents, they were dead by 1940s, early 19 mid 1940s. And I wasn't around until 55, so I missed that generation, and I always felt this big void in there. And so, although my father did genealogy and, we learned a lot about where our family roots came from, and then I belonged to 23andMe, and I
Yeah.
keep finding cousins everywhere.
Okay.
Um, it's just fascinating to me. And I remember going to a reunion with some second cousins at their house, and the things that they were doing, I hadn't spent any time with them really. I knew who they were when we were little kids, but I hadn't spent time with them for 40 years. They did the same kinds of things my family did. We were big jokesters. We did this, we did that. And it was like I was with them all along. And that's familial and
It is
ancestral, I
familiar.
believe. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's genetic because I have two
Uh-huh.
nephews who had who had never met one another. They have now, but at that point they had
Uh-huh.
never met one another. They had
Uh-huh.
exactly the same head gestures, hand gestures. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just amazing what comes down through our DNA. And we
Correct.
can
Yep.
now identify our ancestral homelands, but I think
Yes.
my guess is in 10 years, we're going to be able to find so much more stuff that's encoded into the
I think
DNA.
so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember finding out that I had Neanderthal roots,
Oh,
and that
yeah.
really blew my mind. Like I have 80% more than somebody else might, or something like that. And I'm thinking, well, that's DNA. But what I love about your book is that you also have the ancestry of place, the ancestry of
Past lives. Past lives.
past lives.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so I'm looking forward to finding out exactly
Y-
what that
y-
entails as well.
Well, if you don't mind, I'd love to say something about past lives.
Oh, please. Yes.
Okay, so I don't know if you may not remember this, but there was a woman named Ruth Montgomery
Hmm.
who channeled books.
Yes.
And she had this thing called the cluster theory, that people reincarnated in about the same place and same time in order to change the world. And so she talked about all the great composers that uh, they're all
Yes.
around the same time. Then she talked about, Washington, Jefferson, Adams, Franklin, Monroe, Madison. I mean, they all came
Yeah.
together in the perfect storm. And so
Uh-huh.
that whole cluster theory, I think we do. I
I
mean,
agree.
yeah, I don't think we may not change the world, but we
Right.
do come back with the cluster that of those we love and those we have problems with.
Yep.
And I think the next book I write is going to be about past lives.
Well, that's fast. I love
Yeah,
that. I absolutely
it's
love that.
it's going
Yeah.
to be so much fun to write about. Let me ask you, have you had experience of past lives?
Yes. Yep.
W-
Several actually.
Was it a
Yep.
place or people?
My brother and I. when he was alive, of course, we went in to have a reading in Virginia Beach at the Casey
Oh, yeah.
Foundation.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
And we wanted to know where we had been together before. And there
Right.
were probably 400 lifetimes or something. I don't know. But there was one where we were on a mountain, like in Switzerland, and our wagon broke down and started to move. And my brother went off the cliff in there.
Oh,
And I'm standing there watching this happen. And there was another one where my brother remembered being buried alive. He was, they
yeah.
thought he was dead, and they put him in a casket, whatever, and they buried him alive. And that was pretty, for him, it was really difficult, of course. And they kept saying, you're not experiencing this right now,
Right.
But one of the things that I have, there's an Akashic Records reader named Bob, who a lot of people here have talked to about past lives. And there was always something I was drawn to. I read Dolores Cannon's book on Jesus and the Essenes, because I was very interested in the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Essenes. Bob didn't know that. And so he's talking to me and he says, I think that you were an Essene. And I thought, of course I was, because I was drawn to the book. I was drawn to the time. It was wonderful. It was very affirming.
And
Yeah.
some people will want to know about past lives, just like, oh, was I the Queen of Egypt, or
Right.
something
Right.
like that. And I don't think a lot of people understand that we tap into those past lives because we're not only carrying bloodline patterns down, we're carrying patterns down from past lives as well.
Sure.
Because
Sure.
I can just speak for myself that I tend to repeat the same kinds of life,
Yep.
and this life is a breakout life from a lot of the
Okay.
past, and I think it's like a message, some message of spiritual growth.
Yep.
But you talked about that I started life as a genealogist. Here's what I can tell you after a lifetime of genealogy is that it's not about how far back you can trace your family or when they were born and died. It is, once you understand something about your family, you really understand your roots. How did
I
you
love
get
that.
here?
Uh-huh.
Who are you? You
Right.
really learn who you are.
Right.
And
Right.
that's at the end of the line.
Very interesting. I learned that Benedict Arnold was one of my cousins.
Uh,
And I thought, geez, I hope I'm never a traitor, but I wasn't there. We don't really know. I mean, we know some things about what he did, but I agree with you. And I think there's a lot of lives that we've led that are just regular lives. It's no,
I
we
think so.
weren't yeah, like you say, it wasn't some big, big
You were
dramatic.
Cleopatra or
Right,
whatever.
right,
Yeah.
whatever.
Um,
Yeah.
I
I love
do
that you said that, though. I think you're right. I think that if we know about what happened in our family, we know more about ourselves. I think that's very, very true. Yeah.
absolutely, because I had a dream one night that in the dream I opened a door and there was my grandmother and her mother, and I mean back as far as I could see, and I
Uh-huh.
realized that family line was such incredible strength. I mean,
Uh-huh.
just incredible. They were all, I say they were forces of nature.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that if you know that, you can tap into that
You
and
can.
become a force of nature.
Yeah. And
And
actually you've done that because you've taken it and you've used it as a building block for your books and for the things that you're doing in your life that you probably never would have imagined you would be doing when you
no,
were
and
my. Mhm.
I've said this so many times. If I had to plot my life out, it would be way more boring than the way it actually went
I understand.
and
I
is turning
understand.
out today.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But there are no mistakes. So,
I
that's
know.
you would like to be.
Well, and
I don't know
I
if you
think,
have an answer to this, but this
oh,
young lady wants to know if someone is a black sheep in this life, were they probably black sheep before?
oh, were they black sheep before? If they're following a similar pattern, sure, because, well, two things. Black
Mhm.
sheep are outliers.
Right.
And maybe they're black sheep only because they're outliers. Like I had a grandmother who did not approve of my life. I
Uh-huh.
was her black sheep. Now, I wasn't some criminal, anything horrible. So the
Right.
black sheep that you're discussing, Juno, could be they were just an outlier. But anyway, to get back to your actual question, yeah,
Mhm.
I think if you're an outlier, you tend to stay more of an outlier. And
Yes.
I think that's because you've learned so much, you're willing to show yourself. You're not willing to hide behind a mask or have other people force you into a box. So, yes,
Absolutely.
I would say yes.
It's living authentically.
It
It's
is
being who you were
absolutely,
meant to be. Yeah.
absolutely.
So Kristen Louise must be someone you know. I've not seen you. Welcome, Kristen. She said Pamela Coleman Smith is her cousin.
Ah, well, that's a good one.
Wow. And yeah, she's got lots of I had a group of, you remember, we have what? We have 4 and then 8 and then 16 and then 32 and then, it goes on and on. And then there's relatives in between. So yes, part of mine was the Arnold family, which I never knew. And that was like on my paternal grandmother side of the family, and they came over on the Mayflower. And then there were other people. My father was most interested in, he was very interested in Civil War. So he would plot, find out all the family that were in the Civil War. That was his big deal. So,
Well, speaking to Kristen Louise and her comment,
uh-huh.
coming, getting, I don't know if you've ever seen a replica of the Mayflower. It's like a little tugboat. I mean,
Oh, I've
it is
seen the
not,
Mayflower. Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
tiny.
Yeah.
And to get on that boat with everything you own and go
Right.
somewhere where there was nobody.
Right.
I mean, really, why I'm
That's an
saying this
outlier.
to you is that's an outlier, but that's also somebody with amazing courage and willingness to risk. So that's part of I'll call it your bloodline. That's part
Hmm.
of stuff that's encoded in your DNA is that
Sure.
ability to take a chance.
Oh, wow. I mean, that is fascinating, Kristen. Thank you for sharing. Pamela Coleman Smith was a tarot, has a tarot deck. And
Yeah,
so she
well,
obviously,
yeah,
yeah,
she's the major artist of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck.
but
And
not the Rider Waite, but the Rider Waite
well,
Smith.
it is actually
Correct.
the Rider-Waite, and if you look in the right-hand
Oh,
corner of the
okay.
cards, you'll see her initials done in a very artistic fashion.
Fascinating. And that must have been in Victorian times. Wasn't that when that all came out? Because a lot of the images are more Victorian.
They are Victorian, but her background was on the stage, and
Oh, okay.
so there are some interesting articles that some of her illustrations, the person actually looks like they're on a stage.
Okay.
So it's very interesting if you start digging into it.
Sure. And that will put you in mind of Shakespeare, life is a stage and we're merely actors
But
on it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know an English
Yeah.
teacher, another English teacher, right?
That's right.
Um,
That's right.
it's very hard for me to watch a chat and pay attention. My brain doesn't go like this. If there's questions, would you tell me because I have
Yes.
trouble with that?
No, it's okay. I usually put them up underneath where we are. I don't know if you can
Okay.
see. Can you see them? Yeah. I mean, there's other things over here, but I'm monitoring some of the
Okay.
questions.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Now, this blows me away, Carolyn. You and I need to talk. Uh, Not only Benedict Arnold, but think you were in a scene and you've been an unpaid genealogist for 40 years. Wow. I bet you're part of my family there somewhere. That's amazing. Wow. Thank
Genealogy
you.
is a bug, that's for sure.
It is. And, did you do this all when you were younger? Did you do
I
genealogy?
I start honest to God, people don't believe me. It's just the truth. I started when I was 8 years old.
Okay.
I I wrote a letter to the National Archives when I was 8 years old, trying to get my grandmother's grandfather's Civil War records
Uh huh.
because she had told me about him, and I wanted to see. So
Yeah.
yes, I've been at it basically
For a
my
long,
entire.
long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't as interested in it, but my father did this whole spread. You know, he had that big map of it, and he used to go. We lived in New Hampshire, and he'd go up to Maine because we had some boat builders up there that were part of the family. So he went up there to find the cemetery and all that. He was really into it, but it was when he was older. I think you have more time when you're older to spend on things like that.
Yeah, I think so.
You know?
But I think
Yeah.
that, one of the things I really loved about doing this book is I have found, and I know you said that we have an older audience here, but I have found
Hmm.
that people who are in kind of the 25 to 35 generation
Hmm.
are so disconnected from family. This is broad brush,
I
okay?
understand. Yes, not
But
everybody, but yes. Uh-huh.
but doing the ancestral work with tarot gives them an entryway into
Yes,
finding family that they want to connect with.
sure.
And I did see the question here from Katie Ray. Yes, the
Hmm.
book, each each big section has several spreads actually.
Yes, there are tons of spreads.
There are,
We've got ancestors of blood, ancestors of place. She talks
and
about
past
how
life.
places have energy, and I 100% know that. And it's like
True.
going into sacred space. If you go into a sacred space, you can feel the energy, like in a cathedral or a place like that as
Right.
well.
And
Yeah.
you talked about being on Whidbey Island.
Uh
It
huh.
and that the north of Whidbey and the south of Whidbey are so different. I mean, the energies of up around the Navy base and then down in the south. And then
Hmm.
you take the ferry over to Port Townsend, you're in a Victorian seaport.
Yes.
You've
Yeah.
been I mean, you
It's
can
going back in
feel.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, you are
Yeah.
going back in time there. So, yes,
Uh-huh.
there are spreads for past lives, and if you do them, I would really suggest that you try them with someone you feel like you've been in a past life with. Do it you both do the spread, see what happens.
See what happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So before we started, I told Nancy that although I work with archetypal tarot lessons and so on, the journey has, I didn't tell her this, but the journey has always been important to me because I follow Joseph Campbell's work and I love the journey. And I know the tarot is a journey. It's the fool's journey and it goes through. Myself, as you all know, likes more of the oracle cards. And so the first spread that I did this morning was I love it because she says, do the journey spread, start where you are, basically,
Yeah.
and ask the questions. And I used oracle cards and I was completely blown away because I think you can use oracle cards or tarot cards, whatever you feel most comfortable with. So I like that.
Yeah, that's very true, and as I told you earlier, a lot of people, if they look at the 78 cards of the tarot system, because it is a
Uh-huh.
system, it's like, "Oh my god, I can't remember all this stuff." But, you have to remember, you just start from where you are,
Sure,
you
sure.
know?
Very good. Oh, that's nice, Abby. I'm glad you're here, Abby. I interviewed her 2 weeks ago, I think it was, and she is a medium and a psychic, and she sells tarot cards.
Oh, so cool. Thank you, Abby. That is very
Yeah,
kind of
I
you.
know it is kind of her. I have been very lucky that I found you on Facebook. I found Abby in Etsy. So I think the universe is bringing me all the people that I'm meant to see and do things with, and I love it. It's just
Universe
so
is good about
validating.
that stuff, isn't it? The
I
universe
know.
is pretty tricky. And,
Yeah.
I will tell people, if you have the book, take your time. I mean,
Yes.
I have a gentleman that is one of my friends online, and it took him 1 solid year to
Mhm.
work through the entire book because he wanted to think about it
Yes.
moving forward. So it's not just to throw 10 cards and we're done. It
Right.
doesn't work
No,
that
it
way.
isn't.
Yeah.
No, you've made it very well documented, but not over people's heads, which
Thank
is
you.
important. Yeah,
Thank you.
because I think that sometimes daunting to the layman if they're doing something, but the fact that when I'm reading this, I'm going, okay, well, I'm not worried that the word tarot is here. It never was. I knew I could use
Good.
my oracle cards and get the same satisfaction. You bring up something in here I want you to talk to me about because I've not heard of it before.
Okay.
It's called is it a sibyl?
Oh, sigil. A sigil.
Sigil. Yeah.
Yeah. A sigil is a symbolic representation of a thing or a
Okay.
wish or a want. It's a sigil. And
Uh-huh.
I show how to do sigils.
Okay.
I mean, you can do them for anything. I have ones I've created for safe travel. I have one
Okay.
that's dedicated to my ancestors. You know,
Uh-huh.
I'm writing a book right now, not the past life, but another book. And I
Hmm.
actually made this sounds so weird, it dates me, but I actually made the sigil on a piece of wood and I dripped candle wax and put my thumbprint in it. And it was like, this is my vow that I'm going to do the very best I can.
I love that.
And thank you.
Beautiful.
So sigils can be used in many ways. And in fact, um, there are several books on sigils.
On sigils.
Yeah.
Okay. It just was something I'd not heard of before, although symbology is something I look into all the time. But the other thing is crests, family crests.
Right.
Have you found those are fascinating
They
to
are
see.
fascinating. Where you have to be careful with those is there are companies who will say, "Oh, okay, we've got the crest for whatever name,"
Right.
and the actual crest in a heraldic book does not exist. I mean, so you have to
Okay.
be careful. You have to be
I'll
super
be here.
careful. Yeah,
Sure. Somebody could give you, in other words, somebody could give you the wrong information. But
absolutely.
are the crests mostly European? So you
Yes.
wouldn't have a crest if you were from South America, let's say, or India or something.
You know, I can't speak to that because
Uh-huh.
I
Okay.
think
And
no, but
that's okay.
I wouldn't say that. Yeah.
It seems like that it would be more something
Besides,
like that.
you know, in
Yeah.
England, they have the books of heraldry,
Yes, they do. Yeah.
and you know those will show you all the family crests, or I
Uh-huh.
think most of them, and which is a kind of a thing that I think is odd for Americans, just because
Uh-huh.
it's so not in our background.
Right.
But I love the whole sigil thing because you are in effect making a vow through that symbol for something that is very important to you, and writing
Right.
this
Okay.
book is very
Yeah.
important to me. Yeah.
How long did it take you to write this one? Would you say?
About 50
Approximately.
years, and
I get it. I get
yeah.
it.
You know, I said to someone this morning, I could not have written that book 1 year earlier. It
Mhm.
was like the forces came together and I knew
It
that's
was
the
the right
book I
time.
wanted to write. Yeah.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
So I want you to speak briefly also and let the folks know about your book that's coming out. Is it
Oh,
May? Is it coming?
September.
Oh,
It's
September. Okay.
it's one day before my birthday. It's coming out September 1st. It's on Amazon for pre-order. Um,
Okay.
and this is a book. I basically say this in the book. I'm asking you to take a leap of faith with me. Let's go for this ride together. So it's called Ancestral Grimoire. And
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
the thesis for me, or kind of the theme for the book, is I believe that we all have magical abilities in bloodlines. I believe if we
I
go
agree.
back however many generations, we are going to find the person who could read the weather.
Right.
And that's a magical thing. I mean,
It is
that,
magical.
you know, the person who can, there's a thing about whistling up the wind. The person who knew how to work with earth energy and could help change things in an earth thing, the people who work with cycles of the moon, phases of the moon. So there's several introductory chapters, and then there are 12 chapters of 12 different kind of magical talents that I believe
Hmm.
that we you know
You could
that
carry.
come
Yeah.
down in our DNA. But you know, if you go back a couple generations or even five or six, you may not ever find it till you get back multi generations, but I
Sure.
think it, because you know what? I don't think we would all be here unless we had that magical energy
I agree.
flowing through our DNA.
No, I agree. I think that a lot of people in the spiritual community, at least, we made this decision to come here at this time.
Exactly.
It's just the way that it worked. And like you said, there are people that reincarnate together that have been
Right.
together in the past. Maybe it was
Right.
Atlantis, maybe it was somewhere else. But yeah,
Right.
it's
And I
just
think
wonderful.
and nobody's going to read the book and go through January through December saying, oh, yeah, I can do this, 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 this. You're going to find
Yes,
the thing
that
that
speaks to it.
this is in my blood. This
Sure.
is me. Yeah.
When I look back on my mom, who passed when she was only 68 years old, and I was 33, so I feel like I missed some of the later stuff. But she felt it when my brother went through a windshield in Vietnam. He did not die, but she sat up in bed and screamed. And
Yeah.
she had many of those things that she would do. And she also read a lot of Ruth Montgomery. That's why I knew for
Well,
sure.
and a
Yeah,
lot of people now have never heard of her, and her
yeah,
books are really
they
amazing.
are wonderful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've gone
Doesn't she
back.
talk about walk-ins as well?
She
How
does.
some, yeah, she does.
It's
Yeah.
it's quite interesting.
It
Her
is quite
books.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of the family stuff, my grandparents did seances.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
back.
wow.
I know.
Cool.
So, and I know that a bill. Well, I can't. That's a whole nother story, so I won't go there.
Sure,
But
okay. It's all
um,
right.
but I'm happy that my grandparents did that. It kind of validates, and I think I'm waiting for science to catch up with me because
Uh-huh.
I know this is in our DNA. Science just isn't there yet.
No, they're
So
not, and so many naysayers, about near-death experiences even and things like that, so,
yeah.
yeah, I know. So, Heather, you always thought you were someone from the 20s, you hear music from that time and feel it feels familiar, and you sometimes can start singing along with that's fascinating to me. Did you I mean, 20s music isn't something that everybody knows. 30s
No.
and 40s maybe, but yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because then you're into the ragtime. And Heather,
Yes.
I want to tell you, Heather, one of my nieces dresses like she lived in the 1950s. It
Oh,
is the era that she loves 50s music, 50s clothes.
uh-huh.
So I'm sure she probably lived in the 50s.
Mhm. Yep. I like the 40s, but I know that's more my parents' influence on me, because they played Glenn Miller and all those songs when I was growing up. But I also am very big on Victorian times and actually ended up doing a lot of study on the history of the Victorian times. And so I know some of that's ancestral because my family's from there, but there was something else about it that just always spoke to me. So I think sometimes those things can put us in a direction. What is it that we
I think
find?
so.
Yeah, yeah,
I think you're right.
yeah. Abby, she's recommending your book to people because she focuses on ancestral work. She's the one that loves your book and you. So thank you, Abby. I mean, it's great that there are people out there that already know all about Nancy. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. And Abby, if you don't mind me asking really quickly, what is your Etsy shop?
Oh yeah. I believe it's AV Tarot. And if
Okay,
I'm wrong, put it in the chat, Abby. If I've bought some stuff from her before, so.
great.
So Kristen started the book, Going in Bites. She wants to connect with Indigenous people via the land on which her house is. I love that. Oh, Shawnee. Okay.
So,
Wow.
well, I know the Shawnee were in Kansas and Iowa. I don't know if Kaskaskia, I think, was Illinois. So, are we
Okay.
talking, Kristen? I don't know if you can respond on here, but you're talking Midwest, I think.
Yeah, I
I,
think so.
okay.
I think the Shawnee
Um,
were in the Midwest. Yeah.
yes, absolutely, you can. I I'll tell you what I just do locally here by where I live. There's a coffee house really close to me, and I'll go down there on a summer day, get a glass of iced tea, and I'll sit and just let myself feel what the energy of the land is under me. And
Ooh.
once you have that tap in with the energy of the land, then you can start adding in the energy of the people who live there. So
Okay.
I live in San Diego. This is where the first of the 21 California missions were built.
Mm-hmm.
I will go there, get into just a super calm space, and I can hear voices of people who live there. So you can do this, but
Sure.
first get in touch with the energy, the land spirits themselves.
Wow. Here's one also. Dear Sherry is a has her own channel here too. She's wonderful, and she never knew who her biological father was because her mother would never answer the question, so she stopped asking.
Well, I'd love to know, Sherry, if you did DNA, because Sherry, my mom didn't know who her dad was until she was 90 years old, and that was came through DNA, and her
Hmm.
mother would never tell her, which, I know depending on the generation, maybe there were cultural reasons they didn't want to say, but this is just me
Yeah.
personally saying I think that's so cruel because I see how hurtful it was to my own mother not to know her father, but fortunately through DNA she found her father. So
Wow.
Sherry, I would suggest you do DNA,
Uh-huh.
and
Yes,
let me say one thing though: be prepared to be surprised. That's DNA.
that's DNA for you. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
One of the sites, 23andMe, you can
Hmm.
also do it on Ancestry, I believe. My brother
Yes, you
did it
can.
on Ancestry, and I didn't know that. So we aren't connected on the same site,
Uh,
but I must have like thousands of cousins.
oh, you do
That-
because direct ancestors are the moms and the dads. If you
Yeah,
go back to the time of Elizabeth first or Shakespeare, you by that time you have around 1 million direct ancestors, and that's not brothers, sisters, cousins, second
right.
cousins. So you're going to have thousands. I mean, and I'm not out here shilling for ancestry DNA, but
Oh, I
Sherry,
know.
I will tell you they have the largest database, so you have a better chance of connecting just because their database is so much bigger than anybody else's.
Yeah, yeah. It's been one of the things that fascinated me the very most was that I was teaching a class in Seattle and had a student in the class, and his brother died, and he was just having a really hard time. He was in his 30s, and then he had to take his brother's wife and help her out and help his wife. So I knew him pretty well from that experience because sometimes students just come and leave and they don't talk to you at all. And so about 2 years later, I went to 23andMe, and I'll be damned if he isn't my cousin.
Oh my gosh.
And
Oh,
so I knew his address, and I wrote to him and I said, this is your old teacher from this class, and we are cousins. And, he was blown away just like I was, but it
I
was
I have
him.
I haven't
Yeah,
heard that one before. That's a good one.
it really is. It was so cool. I never would have ever thought that somebody that I would teach randomly, and we're both from the East Coast because I grew up in the East Coast and he did too.
Yeah, it
So
sounds like your family has very deep Northeastern roots,
it
which
does.
you're
Yeah.
very lucky because the genealogy in the Northeast is probably the best
The best.
documented of
Yeah,
anywhere.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. They kept good records. So Deb says that she's made tarot boards to use to fit her ideas at the time, one an astrology one and one a Chinese house-based system. I think that's fascinating. Yeah,
I
that's
haven't thought
really
about
cool.
that.
Yeah.
Uh, Deb, I don't know how this works, so could you say a little bit more about that? I'd really love to hear.
Yeah, write it in the chat. Well, yeah, please do,
Yeah,
Deb.
that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see. Yes, the description will give you all kinds of ways to also get in touch with Nancy. Okay.
Oh,
So
thank
make
you.
sure you recognize that.
Thank you.
So Craig says he avoids Native American sites. He has a guide. Actually, his guide is Clara Bow, the 1920s
20
actress.
movies. Yeah, movie star.
Yeah. And he has another one that's a movie star as well. But She told him it's not a good place. Places like Gettysburg, Pearl Harbor, Native American. Yeah, I every time I'm at Gettysburg, if I go, I've been there several times, I get very oppressed by that
You
energy of
know,
that area.
Craig, Joshua Chamberlain, who was the colonel of the 20th Maine and was wounded severely at the Battle of Little Round Top, he wrote often about Gettysburg, and he said, "Where great events happen, great spirits still reside."
Hmm.
And, you know, I think the spirits who would have died, I mean, we're talking about 50,000 people over 3 days.
Yes. Yeah.
The There are places like that, Craig. I totally agree with you. I do not want I do not want to be. I don't
Hmm.
want to be in that energy. And Craig, I'm glad
Hmm.
you brought it up because when you're doing this work, I don't want random spirit things popping into my life.
Right.
I'm very well protected and I have very good boundaries around this.
Uh-huh.
So Craig, I totally get where you're coming from.
My son was traveling overseas, and he went to, I think he went to Auschwitz. He couldn't stay there. He really had a bad time there. He had to leave.
You know,
It's just,
both of my sister-in-laws are Jewish, and I don't ever want to go ever.
right.
It would
No
be too,
desire. Yeah.
no, too
But
painful.
unfortunately, we're seeing another Auschwitz going on in the Ukraine, and that's really upsetting. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Um, let's see what else. What anything that you would like to bring
Yeah,
up that maybe I haven't talked about?
I just saw, I think it went by so quick.
Okay.
Uh, Abigail, thank you, Abigail, saying she's so drawn to places
Yeah.
she can't handle. Okay, places like that too. You know,
Yeah.
there's a really interesting energy about place, and in
Hmm.
Ancestral Grimoire, I talk about working with energy of a place as one of your magical skills. And I walked around my own neighborhood,
Hmm.
and you can, if you take the time and you really are open, you can feel exactly which house is like, I'm never going in that house. And there
Just
are
got
other
looks
places
feels bad. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
feels bad. And you know the energy under that house, something weird is going on there. And to me, that is a fascinating thing to study, is the
It
energy of
is.
a place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, yeah, Abigail said, I'm so drawn to places like that. Like I want to slip into the soil. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Abigail, I was in North Dakota at a historical site. And when I say back of beyond, you may not know that phrase, but this is, a country road, a littler country road, and driving across the dry riverbed. I mean, I was in the back of beyond.
Uh-huh.
And I knew, Abigail, that if I crossed this one thing, I was going to be in another time and place, and I didn't want to be in that time and place. But we do get these feelings, and I think we have to trust that we're getting that message. Don't either cross the line or don't cross the line.
Uh-huh. Yep. Um, I just feel like there are places that I remember when I was a little girl and I was in the back seat of the car. We were driving from New Hampshire to Santa Barbara, of all places,
Oh
and we were
wow.
going through the South. And of
Hmm.
course, the South in 64, 65 wasn't a good place to go. But
No.
I sat up in the back seat of my car. I was 9 years old. Excuse me. And I said, I've been here before.
Wow.
And my mother said, "Oh, no, you haven't." My mother was pretty cool about stuff like that, but she just like, "No, we've not been through here." I said, "No, no, I've been here before." And then she said, "Oh, I understand." She was always good about that. She knew that there was some, thing of place that reincarnation, and I think that was the Ruth Montgomery influence.
It
It
was,
must
and
have.
I'm hoping you can see it in the chat. I would really love to many people here know that they have been at another place in another life.
Uh-huh.
I'm curious. I'd love to know that.
Okay. Yep. Um,
Um, Okay, I
But
see
that's
that pop.
interesting, Marg. It's like what my experience with that student. That's really cool.
That is really
Deb,
interesting, and
she answered your question. Deb answered your
thank
question
you.
about she was into astrology and then she met a channeler. And
Okay.
so let's see. Juno
Oh,
said, now Kate says 5 women in her family have married men from around the world. Is that a pattern?
I think it probably is because, again, it's not an outlier, but it's someone who is open to possibility.
Uh-huh.
And that's not the norm. In
Mm-hmm.
many ways, that is not the norm, especially if you go back to my parents' or grandparents' generation.
Right. Used to
Yeah.
be, you'd have to get somebody in a family, like you married the neighbor's kid, or, it wasn't that far away. I think that's very interesting.
I will tell you, I just read that if you go back enough years, that it was incredibly common to marry your second cousin.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Well, the
lot,
Kings did it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Nancy Jean, she has her own channel, Nancy Jean's Garden. Nancy
Okay.
Jean has made a scarf, and she throws stones on the scarf, and it's a divination that she has
Right.
done, and she's also doing some other work that way. So yeah, she's fascinating like you are, and she's
Well,
been
thank
doing
you.
tarot for years and years. So
Thank
um
you. And I
yeah,
saw somebody here mention Deerfield, which is in what, Massachusetts, right?
yeah, or it could
Oh,
be New Hampshire. Yep.
it was the house of
Oh,
the
Deerfield,
great.
Mass.
Oh, it
Yep.
was a family house. That's really interesting. And
Mm,
again, um, how did you end up there? What led you to the house of your
to the
ancestors?
house.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did read just the other day that the 1950 census is out.
It's on. Oh, yeah, I saw that, and we've been. If people don't know, uh, censuses are not released until 72 years
I
after
know.
after
Yeah.
after the census is taken for privacy reasons. So,
Uh-huh.
everybody's been waiting for that census.
Uh-huh. I am well, I'm actually waiting for the 1960 census because I was born in
Okay.
55.
Uh,
But my brothers would have been born in that. So I'm interested
they've
in
been
seeing
there.
that. Yeah. It's very
I did
fascinating.
see that Kate said past life places: Iceland, France, Sahara Desert, pioneer
Ooh.
days crossing the country. And, I'm glad you mentioned all those things because I think we typically hone into a life. But if we
Uh-huh.
look across time, I think we've had so many, and
Right.
not
Uh-huh.
surprising at all.
Not
And,
surprising.
and I will just say this one last thing about past lives. I was, uh, I've always had this thing about World War II, which happened before I was born.
Right.
But I was watching a movie, and there was a guy flying a fighter plane, and he just moved his hands on the whatever that thing is called to move the plane, the stick.
Yeah.
I I knew that gesture. I mean, I knew that gesture. I knew exactly what he was
What
doing.
he was doing. Yeah.
Yeah, so we may get these hints through many other things, many other ways.
If we were only if our parents were more cognizant when we were younger, although mine were pretty good, but we would have remembered so much more at that period of time that we could have, gleaned information from than we would now. It's a little bit harder, don't you think?
I
Uh,
think it is, and I just was reading about a month ago, reading a book of children's memories of heaven, and it
huh.
said when children reach the age of 5, they start forgetting before.
Right. Right.
And if we have time, I'll tell one quick little story. My
Oh, we have
great
plenty of time. Yeah.
my great nephew is 5 years old, and as soon as he could talk, he called my sister, his grandmother. He would call her Badu, and
Oh,
he Badu. And finally, within the last couple months, she said, "Why do you call me Badu?" And he said, "Well, that was your name before you died." And so you know that he's remembering something.
yes. Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really interesting.
A good friend of mine was watching her son in the car seat in the back through the mirror, and he was
Mirror.
going, like this and looking, and he was just a baby, or two and a half, She said, "What's wrong, Michael?" He said, "Well, I was a different color last time."
Wow. I
So,
love
there
that.
are hints. Yeah, yeah, there are hints. And
And children, if you listen to children, little children, the stuff that comes out of them is amazing because I
it
I
is.
know that I know they have that memory.
Yep, they definitely do. Kay's Travels said she remembers living in Egypt. She's been to 45 countries, but skipped Egypt in this lifetime because she was badly abused there.
Kay, I totally agree with you. And I will tell you, there was a movie years ago called The Ten Commandments, and there was a scene. I was a little
Mhm.
kid. Uh, There was a scene of slaves building the pyramids. That scene came on, and I started screaming. And my
Oh,
dad had to take me out of the theater. So I totally get probably something equally horrible happened to you in Egypt.
yeah, you could have been caught underneath all those bricks.
Oh,
You never know. Yeah, yeah.
no. Or if God forbid you were one of the guys buried with the Pharaoh when you were still alive. Yeah.
To be a
Now,
servant or something.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
hey, I'm not going to Egypt either.
yeah, yeah.
No.
I understand. Marge said she feels very solemn and protective at Pearl Harbor. Now there's a more recent one. Um, Interesting.
And
Some are fascinated by World War II. Okay, good. Good.
I think we are innately drawn to a culture that we have been.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that is something inside of us.
Yeah,
And I totally get that one.
yeah. Well, and Kate says, and Sophie's Choice got to me too. Absolutely got to me.
Yeah.
It was a movie that I thought was brilliantly done, and but it blew me away because she had to make a choice, and I just felt like part of that. That have you seen that movie before,
I
Nancy?
I
Yeah,
have, and I
yeah.
will never see it again.
I know. It's like Schindler's List.
Yeah,
You see it once, you don't need to see it twice. Yeah.
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 Um, I don't know what your time schedule is, and I didn't know if you wanted us
Throw a
to
few cards.
grab cards, few
Yeah,
cards.
we can do that.
Oh, I do
Um,
want to read about the chastity belt,
I
though,
know.
um, because I have underwear that have always bothered me. Wow.
Huh?
You know what,
Maybe
Arlene?
we can read on that.
I'd be really
Yeah.
tempted to try different styles, like French cut, bikini, whatever all the different styles are,
Right.
thong. I will try different ones and see if there's one that doesn't bother you
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because that's so well, number one, it's so hideous
I
that someone would have done that to
would have
you.
done that to you. Yeah.
And, Arlene, this may be out of school or untoward, but if they really bothered you, it's like, I'm not wearing underwear then. Forget it.
Yeah.
If it
Yeah.
if it triggers that in you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
There's
I'm
some,
happy to draw a couple
but
cards.
you can heal that. I would think you could heal that if you could find a way to
I think you
tap into
could.
that.
I
Yeah.
think that's true. But I
Uh-huh.
think I I think when you have a physical trigger of a physical abuse,
Yes.
I do think it's hard.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't say that it would be easy work. It's almost delving into shadow, and shadow
Very,
work is a lot of people don't want anything to do with it. I don't
very
really feel like this has that in it. I feel this
no.
is a
I,
real
no.
positive thing. So I
Well,
really like that. Yeah.
thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to throw a couple cards and see what if somebody
Sure.
has something in our realm here that we're talking about.
All right. All right. Um, well, Carolyn, that's very interesting to me. Classics major, Latin, Greek, ancient history, Roman Greece. Yeah, I believe that. And those ladies are right. I can see you there. I was told my mother was in Egypt. She was some kind of she had, no, not anybody big deal, but she was there. So, um,
So how do we do this?
um,
Do we
do
have
you want to take
a
what,
method?
for instance, do you want to take a look at the, Let's see. Do you want to take a look at the chastity belt? I think,
Well,
or
no, because I really think that gets into shadow work, and it's probably not appropriate for
okay. All
this.
right. This is Kathleen, who also has a channel. She said her daughter was talking and playing like someone was with her. When asked, she said she was playing with her sister.
Mm-hmm.
This shook her up because she was supposed to be a twin. She lost one baby in first 3 months.
Kathleen, in the book that I was referencing about children's memories of heaven, I read this story over and over again that the child who survived remembers the other one, and
Yeah.
they do communicate with them. And as the book said, something around age 5 or 6, those memories start to fade.
Okay. Wow. I agree with that.
Well,
I
how
understand.
about I just draw a card for you and your ancestral work?
That's great. That's
How we
fine.
do? How about that?
All right. I don't mind that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because
I have a couple other little tiny questions here,
okay,
and let's go ahead and start with that one.
I'm going to start with you. How's
All
that?
right. Start with me.
Okay, so I am using the Radiant Tarot,
Oh,
and
that's a nice one.
I'm
Uh-huh.
laughing because the six the 6 of Cups is my personal card for the ancestors. When this comes up, I know there's an ancestral message, okay?
Okay.
The
Yep.
next card is Temperance. And what I want to tell you about temperance, a lot of people say it's like balance. It, it,
Uh-huh.
it really isn't. Temperance is about the alchemist in the laboratory, and he's got 100 bottles on the wall, and he's pulling down bottles, trying to create the perfect blend for the life.
Uh-huh.
So the message from the ancestors to you is about you haven't quite found the blend, the perfect blend.
Yep.
I think there's some more unexpected changes coming to your life.
I agree.
I think the message
I
is.
agree. Well, coming on here was when I was about, coming on to do a channel. I'm like, what am I going to do? I don't read tarot really, and the oracles sort of came in later, but mostly it was working with people like right here, doing interviews, learning new
Mhm.
things that way, and it just grew from there. But I remember being in that funk of what do I for like 40 years. So that's fast. That's fascinating.
And
Thank you
maybe the
very
thing that maybe the bigger message is there's something about alchemy that is on your radar, maybe
Okay.
soon. Something to
Yep.
think about. Okay.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. That's
You're
fascinating.
welcome.
Yeah. Um, Kate wonders if she was a druid.
Well, I think Kate probably was a druid, but let's see what she needs to
Okay.
know about being a druid.
Sure.
Okay, Kate. What does Kate need to know about being a druid? Well, I'll tell you one thing, Kate. You had some hard times. Um,
Um,
and I'm talking about physical labor. And I actually think that in that lifetime, you had some kind of injury because of this physical labor. And I wanted to know more. I drew a second card, the 3 of Pentacles. And this is, if you know tarot, this is the card of working with others.
right.
And I just keep getting work for you, that there is something about very hard physical labor, and you were hurt in that life doing labor,
Hmm.
which is not to mean it's a bad life,
Right, right,
you
right.
know.
Look what I got. I got sadness and disappointment, regret, depression.
Yeah,
And as you were talking and I pulled the card, it was like, oh my God. It's
yeah,
always,
yeah.
it's always like that.
It's
Yeah.
very synchronicitous.
It is
So,
synchronicity.
Kate, thank you for the question. And,
Yeah.
I would be really, I don't know why I want to like hold my shoulder when I see your picture. So
Ah,
it's like,
okay.
did you hurt your shoulder? Something? That's how it felt. That's how it felt to me.
Or she might be shouldering something that's,
Possibly,
yeah, yeah.
possibly.
Okay.
Do you want to do one more?
Yeah.
Okay.
Juno wonders if she had an Asian past life.
Okay. I don't even have to draw a card to give you my answer. No,
I
you
bet.
did not. You did not have an Asian past life. You were somebody who, as a merchant, traveled a lot through Asia. So you were in
Oh.
Asia a lot. You were not Asian. You genetically were not Asian, but you spent most of your life in Asia.
Hmm.
What?
I have
What's
here
your
that you rose from the ashes.
okay? I
Being
do
a
feel like I'm sorry to interrupt you. I
no,
just want
no,
to
it's
say,
fine.
I'll forget it. I really feel like you were a merchant because I can see this line of people and animals, and they're
Ooh,
loaded down. So some kind of merchant. So
sure.
I'm so anyway. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, no, it's fine. It's fine.
And what
Um,
card did you get there for her? For
oh,
Juno?
this one was the Phoenix, and I think that's interesting. She lives in Arizona. I know her, so she doesn't live in Phoenix, but
Oh, okay.
you rise from the ashes. You were being offered a second chance. The end of despair. What was lost is restored. You
Yeah.
lost something in a lifetime before, and but I agree with you. I think it's more that she was involved in trade and
Yeah,
not
I think
necessarily.
so. I think
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Okay. Want to do one
There's just
more?
we can't, yeah, because of Marg here, and I thought it was interesting. She asks if she was an oracle in India.
Okay.
Oh, these are all slick cards.
You know, when you do tarot long enough, you start hearing the answers before you draw the cards.
Before you, yeah, yep,
Yeah.
I
Um,
agree.
I don't think you were an oracle in India. However, I think someone in one of your lifetimes was one, and it's that being an oracle is it's not your bloodline. It's some other life, and they weren't a relative in another life. The- Go ahead with your oracle because I'm not done thinking about
Okay,
this.
that's fine. Ooh, I pulled a dreams card. I would say your dreams are calling you and are reaching out for you in your dreams, vivid dreams and dream messages. You might be able to get an answer as to who it was if you watch your dreams.
Okay, here's what I would suggest. Start being an oracle. Start being an
Mm-hmm.
oracle. And I wouldn't just write down like you're the oracle from Delphi. I wouldn't just write down what you think is going to happen today. Tell somebody every day. See if you can be an oracle for that person. I think that's going to tell you a little bit more if you were or if you were related to somebody who was, because the energy is very strong.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm getting the Page of Cups. I just feel like there is something there, but you need to
Something there.
practice. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Wow,
So
that's fascinating. Oh, Abby has a question, and then we'll lock it up here. She
okay,
just wonders if any the ancestors have any wisdom about her dad.
okay.
Thanks for the questions, everybody.
Yeah.
We'll
Thank you,
have to have
everybody.
Nancy. We'll have to have you come back and just do readings. That would be fascinating.
Oh, that would be so much fun. I'd love to do that.
Okay, that's great.
Okay, let's see. Ancestors. I have to kind of get my head in a different
Yeah,
space.
okay.
Ancestor reading for Abby. Brief wisdom about your father. Uh, the card I got was somebody who held on too hard. They held on to things just too hard, and it made life difficult for them and for others. That's the message that I just get the I'm so afraid if I hold on tight enough, I won't be afraid anymore. I mean, this is what I feel, this clenching of the fist. about hanging on that hard. Um, I don't know if
Yeah.
that's have helped you, Abby. And it's posted somewhere here how you can get a hold of me, and I could
Yes.
draw some more cards. Okay.
Well, I get karmic justice.
Okay.
A wrong made right, you will be vindicated, or maybe your father will be vindicated. And he will get what he deserves. But there's some sort of a karmic lesson,
That
it
actually
seems.
feels like a fit. That feels like a fit to me.
It does.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Abby.
Yes. Thank you. And
Yeah.
I wrote the name of your new book, and some people have already pre-ordered it. They're so excited,
Thank
which is
you.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Ancestral Grimoire. It's
Grimoire.
yeah, Grimoire.
It is, and typically well, traditionally it would be called a book of spells. I'm
Okay.
referring to it as a book of shadows, where you keep all your readings, keep all your experiences with the whistling up the wind and working with the energies under the ground. And it's a place where you keep amass this ancestral knowledge.
Yeah, it's fabulous. But don't forget also about
Yeah,
this
thank
book.
you. Yeah,
And
thank you.
I'm going to enjoy it, and I'm going to talk to Nancy about all my experiences with it, because I've already been blown away this morning by my first layout, and
That's so
I've
cool.
enjoyed this so much. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for inviting me. This has been great. I'd love to come back and do readings. That'll be fun. I enjoy it.
Good. Well, we would love to have you come back.
Thank you.
And it's funny. Juno says her her case on her phone says Book of Spells. There you go.
There you go. See,
Yeah,
it's those wonderful little omens, Juno.
it is. Yeah.
They're there all the time.
They're there all the time. They
Yeah.
truly are. All right. Well, thanks. And thanks everybody for coming by and showing us some of your information. I'm sorry I couldn't get to everybody, but
I'll be
thank you
back.
so much. Yes. Thank you,
Okay.
Nancy.
Cool.
All
Thank
right.
you